Today I'm going to be showing you how almost anyone with a smartphone can make a professional product video like this. Quick disclaimer for this video, I am not in any way, shape, or form sponsored by, partnered with, or associated with Coca-Cola. This is simply just a video that I wanted to make for the enjoyment and entertainment of the viewers. Can you make a professional product video, or any professional video for that matter, on your iPhone or your smartphone? Yes, you can. But the thing is, not everyone can make it. And that's because you need to know exactly what you're doing, and you can't just say that you're a professional photographer and videographer and then expect to be a professional videographer or photographer. Although every single Tom, Dick, and Harry claims to be exactly that. Anyways, I thought today would be a great day to show you guys how you can make a simple professional video using your smartphone and some other equipment here and there. I'm not gonna lie to you guys and say you're only gonna be using your smartphone, because you're gonna need other things. If you guys have made it this far, then please consider subscribing and liking the video, because it helps me out more than you can imagine. Thank you very much, guys, and let's get back to the video. A big thing when it comes to product videos is lighting. It's probably the biggest thing, to be honest with you, other than of course the camera and the sound design. And then on top of that, you also have effects, you have countless amount of other factors that you have to put in, but I'm going to be going over every single one of those things today with you guys and showing you how you guys can piece together your own product video from home. So I'm going to be setting the budget for this around $100 to $150 depending on the quality of things that you want to buy. Obviously, it's going to vary depending on exactly what you want to do for your product video and what product you're going to be shooting. Most photographers and videographers have thousands upon thousands of dollars of camera equipment, so they often have more than one camera, and the average price for a really good high quality camera is about $2,000, although the prices do seem to be dropping on some entry-level cameras that do quite a lot for the price that they have. The M5, for example, from Canon, even the Sony A7 Mark II. I actually use the Mark III because I am a very big fan of Sony, and I recommend that if you ever are looking for a camera, definitely look into Sony. Any media creator with these crazy looking stands with a big box attached to it and a light that usually dims up and down or goes different colors, can shoot lightning bolts out of it, can do all these different things. The truth is, you don't actually need something that extreme. The lighting kit that I recommend to those starting out is made by a company called Canadian Studio. As you can see on screen here, they actually have two non-dimmable softbox lights for just under $100 at $99.95. There's obviously a lot more products that you can choose from, but they're going to range in price. If you are, however, looking for a dimmable or a controllable light, it might get a little bit higher in budget. Next up, I would recommend that you have before doing this is some way, shape, or form of an editing program. I'm a big fan of Adobe products, and I also use Sony Vegas for editing my videos. Obviously, for the common consumer, Adobe is pretty much untouched if you're not willing to spend an arm and a leg. So I would recommend you do that. They have great monthly plans where you could pay for one program, and it's a very good price for what they offer. So now you have lighting, you have an editing program, sound design we can do in the post-editing, and really all else you need is just your smartphone. Okay, hold up a second. Matt, what exactly is going on here? What is that background? Where did those lights come from? What is that stool with a bowl on it? Those are all questions I'm going to ask in due time, but first, let's tackle the lighting. As you can see here, I have two tripods with plug-in softbox lights. Now these lights are actually the same lights that I touched on earlier in this video, which are made by the company Canadian Studio. The black backdrop that you see is just a black bed sheet that I put on top of a white projector screen that my family and I built out of PVC pipe and bed sheets. We're a pretty big fan of doing DIY stuff. You can actually get a reasonably priced and okay quality bed sheet from Walmart for $9.97. If you're willing to spend just a little bit of extra money, I'd recommend that you get a paper background or backdrop instead of the bed sheet option, because this allows for a lot less wrinkles and a lot less work that you have to put into ironing, getting the wrinkles out, and also a lot less work in post-editing. So as you can see, what I'm doing here is I'm just setting up my iPhone to record the video. Now I'm using an app known as Filmic Pro. Filmic Pro is essentially an app that allows you to record professional level videography. In the app, as you can see here, I'm actually using a wheel on the left which controls the ISO and shutter speed. The wheel on the right allows you to set the focus, which basically allows you to focus on things that are either far or close depending on what you're recording. This app is selling for $14.99 on the App Store right now. Alright, so now we have all the settings good, so let's start recording. What I'm doing here is I'm using a spray bottle that I got from my mom's haircutting kit to make it look like it is a cold, refreshing beverage that has a little bit of condensation on the outside that everyone loves to see on a nice warm summer day. After I did this, I then started to slowly open the can step by step so that it would look like a stop motion capture. If you don't know what stop motion is, a great way to reference it is the way that Corpse Bride and Shaun the Sheep were produced. I then wanted to record the scene where I was pouring the drink, so on the stool that I was using, I set up a bowl that was out of frame so that the camera didn't see what I was pouring the drink into. Unfortunately, you can't actually see this because my dumbass forgot to move the camera, but you could hear it. So this cool little contraption that I built here actually allowed for a lot easier of a process when I was in post-editing. So basically all I did is I took some scissors, cut a hole in the bottom of a can, took a shish kebab stick, stuck it through the hole, and taped the shish kebab stick to the bottom of the can so that nothing would slide or move around. And I then used it as leverage so that I could twist the can in a relatively fluent motion that didn't have any jittering or really bad stabilization going on. But after a few minutes of doing this, I realized that there was actually reflection coming off the can. So I decided that I would prop the phone up on a higher platform and have it looking down at the can, which eliminated a lot of reflections and made for an overall better product video in the end. A quick note, make sure that you record this in 120 frames per second. I was an idiot and I recorded it in only 60, and I didn't actually realize that I was doing that. The reason for this is because, as you can see in my product video, there's a little bit of frame blending and digital frame creation going on that is making the frames look really blurry at times, and it also dysmorphs the can here and there. So if you want that really high quality, professional end product look, then please make sure that you do this. Alright, so we're now in the post-editing steps of this video, and all I've done so far is just drag the clip into After Effects, and I opened up an effect known as Mocha. After Effects actually comes with a version of Mocha that you could use, and it's pretty similar to this version. So all I did to start out is just make a really rough keying sketch around the can, and then I click Export Shape Data and copy to clipboard. I then applied the mask to my layer, and the reason that I did this is ultimately just to reduce the amount of steps that I have to do of keyframing in the end. So now that I had this mask made, I went into Effects and I went down to Keying, and then in Keying I went to Linear Keller Key. In the effect, I just clicked the little eyedropper tool beside the blue rectangle, and I then clicked it again. I then selected the shade of the background from the Coke can video because that's the color that I want to key out. I messed with a little bit of softness and tolerance settings to make it look a little bit cleaner, and I then ran a test where I took a completely different colored rectangle, put it behind the Coke can to see what the key kinda missed. I then duplicated that layer and took it into Mocha to mask and fix some of the keying that it missed. Doing the test again showed me that the bottom now looks good, so I'm going to do the same with the body. I then duplicated layer again and took it into Mocha where I can mask out the body, and after all that was said and done, I messed around with some feathering to make it look smoother. So now all I'm going to do is click File, go to Export, Add to Render Queue, and when I'm in Render Queue, I'm going to click on Lossless, and then I'm going to go to where it says RGB and make that RGB plus alpha. Alpha basically means that it's rendering it as a transparent background video. So I imported the next clip where I opened the can frame by frame. I used the shortcut Ctrl-Shift-D to split the layer. I then just rinsed and repeated this process of skimming through the clip, splitting it at points where I would use the next frame of the can being open. When I was done this, I then went to Linear Keller Key and applied the same keying that I did in the first clip. This keys out the black. I then ran the same color test again, and this one actually turned out a lot cleaner, but just in case there was black leaking through the can, I played it safe and I made a quick mask around the body of the can. The one part that I did have to work on is every frame that the can was open, I took a black rectangle and I put it in the hole of the can. I did this so that the hole appeared black, also because if I had any text or anything behind this, when I added all my visual effects, then you might see the lettering through the hole of the can. The last clip that I imported and worked on was me pouring the Coke into the bowl. So I started out by just scaling it up to make it fit the screen, and I then went back into Effects, Keying, and added another Linear Keller Key so that it could appear black background again. I then just turned up the feathering just a little bit and changed the tolerance, and it turned out to be really good. There was actually no extra steps needed in this one, so I rendered it in RGB plus alpha. So we're now in Sony Vegas, and what we're going to start by doing is importing the first clip that we got from After Effects into the project. I'm going to start by cropping the image so that it scales up the can so that it could fit the whole screen, and then I'm just going to skim through the video and pick out the part that I think works perfect for what I'm doing. And once we found what we're going to use, we just press S and that'll split the clip. What I then did is I clicked the little FX logo in the corner that opened up the FX tab, and then I clicked on Gaussian blur. The reason that I want to add a Gaussian blur is because as the can's rotating and scaling up towards us, I wanted to kind of create this coming into focus effect. So also add a really cool dynamic to the video rather than the can just sitting there. So all I'll do is just add a keyframe at the end and turn the Gaussian blur up there. previously mentioned how I want to scale up the can so that it comes into focus. So in order to do this, I'm going to go back into the pan crop and I'm going to add a keyframe at the end of the clip so that I could scale the can up to where I want it to be in frame. And because I did this, the can actually became uncentered. So what I'm going to do is center the can in the middle of the frame so it looks perfect. I then also want to add a little bit more dynamic to the clip through rotation. So I'm going to go to the first keyframe and add in a rotation there. Next up, what I did is I went into Photoshop, and this doesn't have to be Photoshop for you guys. You could literally use any free editing software. You could even do this in Sony Vegas or whatever editing program you're using. I just use Photoshop because it's available to me. And again, you guys could actually use it for a 30-day free trial. But after those 30 days, you will have to pay a little bit of money. But utilize the free trial while you can. All I did in here was just create overlapping text on one another that kind of looks pretty modern and unique, and I just made it into an outline of the text so that it kind of has a cool neon effect. I did not add a glowing effect to it in Photoshop. I'll add that in Sony Vegas. I then exported each singular word as its own layer. You can now see that behind this black box here, I now have my wording put in to the beat of the music. This is something that maybe not all editors do, but going to the beat of the music can really create a great workflow and almost makes it more engaging for a viewer or consumer to watch. Next up is the clip that includes the sequence of me going frame by frame opening the can. Basically, I started out by skimming through the clip and picking out the parts that I want, and I then used roughly 4 frames from each clip of the sequence so that it can make up my can opening. If I did them a little bit shorter, it might not have stayed on screen too long and people couldn't really tell what's happening, and vice versa. If I did it longer, it might just be too boring to watch, or it may just take up the screen for too long. Following this, I just scaled it up to size so that it could fill the screen more and take up more of that empty area. And then I wanted it to be a little bit more dynamic, so I added in a transition where it would scroll or slide up onto the screen from the bottom. While doing this, I made sure that I set the first keyframe to fast and the second to slow. This will add more of a gradient and smoother looking product. Final scene that we dragged in was the pouring of the liquid. Like any clips that I have in here, I'm starting by skimming through and picking out the parts that I want to use. And again, I opened up the pan and crop tool and fit it to screen and scaled it to size. On this same clip, I then right-clicked on the video tile and went down to insert/remove envelope. I then clicked on velocity. Velocity is essentially in Sony Vegas what speed ramping is in Adobe products. So all I did is set the velocity down to 50%, and this gave me a nice, smooth, slow motion looking pour. I wish I could have went faster, but unfortunately I didn't record at 120 frames per second, so I cannot go slower without having a really choppy look or disgusting frame blending like I had in the last scene of this. I then decided I wanted to have the can being displayed for the last scene, so I copied the clip from the beginning and brought it to the end. From here, I once again scaled it and positioned it correctly, and I then added in some more text from Photoshop that just said Diet Coke. I then went to Pexels and I found this really cool kind of explosion that I thought would add to the dynamics of the video. So I placed it behind the Coke can where some more stuff could be going on. And then I didn't actually speed ramp this clip. I instead Control left clicked on it and dragged it to how short and quick I wanted it to be. I then backtracked to the can opening sequence and thought that it needed to have more to it. So what I did is I inserted a new video track and I copied the original can opening sequence and pasted it on this new video track. I then slid it a little bit more to the left and scaled it down. What I wanted to do to this is just add a Keller overlaid vignette type can to the left and right side of this to fill up the screen. I then went into the FX tab again and applied a Keller corrector. In the Keller corrector, I turned up the Quavo. Get it? Because offset Quavo. That was such a fucking cringy joke, but I turned up the offset. Essentially just gave me a white overlay on the can and kind of added this really cool effect. As I said, I wanted to have a white can, but I also wanted to have kind of a gray vignetted can. Now my idea was pretty simple, just to do the same exact steps and then just turn down the opacity, which would allow for the can to be gray. But I had a brain fart with this, and this is not at all what you should do, and I'll show you exactly why later. From here, I then wanted to mirror the pouring scene, so I inserted a new video track and duplicated the clip. I then simply just right-clicked on the pan and crop and clicked flip horizontal. This was actually already mirrored perfectly and worked out great. The next thing I did is go through some clips and change up the text a bit. I added some glow in the effects tab to make it pop a bit. As you can see here, it kind of makes the frame really have a lot more of a dynamic look to it rather than just being so dull. I also applied this to every single other bit of text in the frame, and there was a couple times where I may have added just a little bit too much, but that's all right. Now here we are back with the problem I was talking about earlier with the opacity. My camera is died, so I am being forced to record like this. But with the opacity, I turned it down to about 25%, and because it was on a black background before, white with a low opacity is gonna appear dark gray. But when you bring something behind it, like a bright red glowing text, that text is gonna peek through the lowered opacity and it's not gonna look too good. So what I did here is I went into the effects tab and I applied an invert. This basically just allowed me to invert the color from white to black, and I found a good balance in the middle that made it gray. I then went back onto Pexels.com and I found myself this really cool and dynamic bubbly background. I went back into the effects tab and added a chroma key to this, so basically all of the gray would turn into black and they would only see the bubbles that are left on screen. I also repositioned it to a better location and made it so that it spread all across my timeline and had a great background throughout the whole entire video that was dynamic and not too dull or boring. That was kind of the walkthrough guide of how I made a somewhat professional looking product video using the iPhone that I'm on right now. I really enjoyed doing this challenge and it was really fun to kind of take a more creative side onto things like this. I look forward to doing a lot more of these type of videos in the future and a lot more just videos in general. But if you guys did enjoy, be sure to like and subscribe because it does help me out a lot. And if you guys made it this far, then please definitely do like and subscribe. It only takes a couple seconds and it definitely helps me out more than you can imagine. So with that all being said, I will see you guys in the next video that I make. Peace out.